as a person who wonders if maybe society would be better, maybe the world would be a better place if there weren't governments. When I mention this to people, I frequently get the response, well, yeah, but how would this work? Or how would that work? And I guess that's a fair question, except I'm going to argue two reasons why I don't really address that so much. And the first reason is I am not a voluntarist because I think that pragmatically the world would be a better place. For me, it's a moral decision. And I've talked about this a lot, and I'll talk about it more later, but that's not the purpose of this video. So that's my reason. I don't generally enter into conversations about all of the what ifs, the mechanics of how things might work. And I'll tell you one of the reasons that I don't. Here's what I frequently find. I find that when someone asks me, well, yeah, but how would you handle, I mean, who would be the person to certify that barbers had been through 1,200 hours of training before they could give somebody a crew cut, which is in many states what the government requires. Well, without the government, who would do that? Or who would make sure that nobody killed another person? Or if a bicycle was stolen, that the owner was reimbursed for it? Who would take care of that if not for government? And I'm going to tell you why that's not a good argument. I'm going to give you an analogy. Over here off to the side in my backyard, I have about 10, 11 miles before there's another road. There's a big, huge field out there. And let's say that right now I needed to get to the far end of that field. And I looked around to see what resources I have. By the way, there's about 3.5 feet of snow on the field right now. So I would look at the resources I have, and maybe I would look over and say, okay, I've got a pair of stilts, and I could take those stilts and walk those 10 miles on the stilts. So that would be one option. And then I look over here and I say, well, you know what? My neighbor could loan me their slave, and I could ride on the slave's back while they crawl on their hands and knees across the field. And then I could look over and say, oh, there's my snowmobile. And guess which one I would choose and how I would make that decision. Well, first of all, I would eliminate the slave because I think human slavery is wrong. And it's wrong. It's just a bad idea. I wouldn't do it. Even if it was acceptable, that's not a good way to get across the field. Like, that would be very slow. It'd be a bad way. And then I look over at the stilts and I go, no, that when you talk about post holing through snow, that would be miserable. So no, I'm not going to use stilts to get to the other side. And then I look and I go, the snowmobile. I can just fly right along. When I come to a fence, I can just go to a spot where it's deep enough that, the snow is covered where the wire is and go right through it, or find a gate area. I can just take the snow machine and be across there in probably 2 minutes. This would be great. Well, no, not 2 minutes to go 10 miles. I'm sorry. I'm averaging 30, 40 miles an hour. So no, it wouldn't be that quickly. I was thinking per mile. So I would take the snow machine. Good choice, right? And so if you asked me, hey, Shepard, how are you going to get over there 10 miles across the field? And I would say, well, I think the snow machine's the best choice. Now, could you find a problem with a snow machine? Absolutely. You could say, well, you could get it stuck, which I hate because then you have to dig it out. Okay, well, that's a downside. I could give it too much acceleration and not do the blip thing, and I could burn out the belt and then kind of be stuck out there. That's a problem. I could misjudge where the barbed wire is, and I could catch it on the snow machine and have it snap and come whipping around and cut my face up like it happened to my friend Mo 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Don't want to have that happen. So there are a lot of problems that could happen taking a snow machine across. It is not an absolutely perfect way to get over there. I don't know that there is a perfect way. I think about taking a helicopter. But if I had a helicopter available, things could go wrong. That's on my mind because this morning I started reading a book another friend wrote. He was in a helicopter crash. A guy was killed. He was fortunate enough to survive, but it's on my mind. So yeah, there could be a helicopter crash. So yeah, that's not a perfect way to do it. Well, what could be a better way to get across the field? And the best things I can think of still are imperfect. So what do? Do I just say, I'm not going to take the best option out there? Do I judge things based on perfection? Or do I say, no, the snow machine is better than the stilts or the slaves or the slave for a variety of reasons? So that's what I would do. I would say, it's not absolutely perfect. And I can see problems with it. I bet you can find problems with it. But I think it's the best way to get across the field. And then I would do that. And that's kind of how I look at voluntarism. Are there holes? Are there areas in there that I'm like, I have no idea? Yeah. The belt could blow. Yeah, I could get stuck. Yeah, I could. There are all kinds of things that I just don't have an answer for. I can't tell you how I'm going to get across that field with zero chance of the belt burning up, especially as lousy of a rider as I am. I can't tell you that. I don't know. But I'm taking the best option out there. And what I find is that when I try to enter into the conversations with people who are pro-state, they'll say, well, if you had anarchy, if you had voluntarism and somebody stole a bicycle, how would the owner get it back? Gotcha. There's no police department. Gotcha. See, anarchy will not work. Voluntarism will not work. Checkmate. Gotcha. Well, wait a minute. Is that fair? Shouldn't we be comparing the thing that I'm proposing? I think this is the best way to do it. Shouldn't we be comparing that to what currently exists or what else might exist? If we compare it to perfection, that's not intellectually honest, fair, good. That's kind of the wrong thing to do. We should judge things kind of like the scales thing. It needs to balance. Like, we need to judge this fairly. Isn't that true? So this is why when you challenge someone who is a voluntarist, very frequently they will say, it's not really a pragmatic choice. That's not the reason that I'm making this choice. It's a moral choice. And I happen to think that pragmatically it would be a good way to go, but I'm not going to get into the whole argument with you, because unless you agree that we're going to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges, then it's not really worth doing. I hope this analogy helps. And there's so many times in my life when I've held this belief or I've made this argument. And I thought, I'm making a great argument. And then somebody has been nice enough to say, hey, Shepard, that's really a lousy argument. It's not a fair one to make. That's not how you prove your point. And I thought I would help those of you who have used this argument against voluntarists to say, hey, let's come up with a better challenge. And there could be better challenges, but that isn't the one.
Shepard thinks, yes he sure does. He thinks some things. You agree with Shepard on some and don't agree on others. Please subscribe. Oh my heck, please subscribe and make a smart comment.